Welcome to Expanded You, the podcast dedicated to making Asian emotional health mainstream. Join me as we share real life stories and practical tips about developing resilience so you can live out your highest vision of your life. I'm Suzanne, your host, a former aerospace engineer turned master mindset coach. Get ready to meet the expanded version of you. Welcome back to another episode of the Expanded You podcast. Again, we have Sally here as our co-host of the episode. We're just continuing with the series of growing up Asian American and how we navigated all the cultural expectations and how we really built our life on our own terms and not submit to other people's expectations. So today we have a special topic that we wanted to share with you guys about how basically our family immigrated from Asia, from Vietnam for Sally, from Hong Kong for me, and wanting to give us a more stable life. And we kind of not throw it all out the window, but both wanted to do it on our own terms with our studies, with our business, with our career, and how we navigated that conversation with our family and not submit to what they really wanted for us and what they felt was good for us, basically. So, Sally, why don't you start us off with your story of what happened to you when you wanted to build your own life your way?
Yes, thanks, Suzanne. And I'm always happy to be coming on this podcast, sharing about our lives and experiences. So let me start from the top. Back in Vietnam, so I was born in Vietnam and I was raised there for 12 years. And I have the education and the cultural engraved in me. And in Vietnam, we teach a lot about communityship and virtual morals, ethics, things like that. And my parents, they were business owners. My whole family, aunts and uncle, everybody's in the same business together, but it's almost like an assembly line. So I come from a very entrepreneurship family. Even my grandmother, who just migrated to the United States, she also told us stories about how she was selling things, just buying and selling. So very much of creating our own wealth. And when coming to the United States, we landed in Minnesota out of all the states, right? Why here? Because our sponsors, which is my uncle, lived here. So that's why we have to land it here first. Honestly, my first experience with American school is I was so confused. I didn't know any English. And the style is very different. In Vietnam, we just sat in one room and waited, just have one teacher. And I mean, I was only in elementary in Vietnam. And when I came to the US, I went straight to seventh grade and started experiencing the American culture of education. And the whole time sitting in the classroom, I remember just looking at the book, no idea what it's saying. I looked at my teacher and then I looked at my friends. I was like, well, they look good. And that was all that was going through my head at that time because I didn't understand any English. Now, I wasn't the best student in class and I just didn't feel very motivated in school. But one thing I noticed is that I was so hungry to prove my self-worth to the society, to my parents. So I had to do good in school by just killing myself over doing more and more homework. So when I was 18, I had to decide if I want to go to school or work at my mom's business. I ended up doing both. I was working at my mom's nail salon because I was making really good money doing that. And I went to school because I didn't want to take over the business, honestly. I felt really trapped there. I felt like my world was just so small. So I went to school for radiation therapy because I thought, hey, cancer is on the rise and I'm probably going to have a job by the time I graduate. I graduated high school in 2008. And we know at that time there was a huge economic fall, right? So picking the right major to go through the next 4 years was so important. And growing up in the Chinese family, my parents expected me to either become doctor, lawyer, or engineer. And I picked to become a doctor in the medical field because I love helping people. And that's the only way I know of helping people is being a doctor or a nurse, something like that. So I started my journey there. I went to a community college in Minnesota. It's pretty popular. It's called Normandale Community College. And honestly, I was killing myself over taking one semester. I did anatomy, physiology, psychology, chemistry, and physics in one term. And I have no idea what the heck is that. I should have consulted a counselor, but I was like, no, I'll figure it out. So I ended up having to drop out of anatomy and physiology because it was just too overwhelming. And being an introvert in high school, I didn't make too many friends. So when I went out to the college, I felt like a whole new world had opened up to me. And I started hanging out more at the student centers instead of going to the lab to do my lab work, things like that. So when I was 19, I was introduced to the financial industry and I started dabbling into it. And I find out, hey, I think I like this more than school. And as I started to become busier in developing myself and growing in the financial industry, my knowledge, my skill set, I drifted farther and farther away from secondary education. And one day I just told my parents, I think I was 20 at that time. I just had enough of school because it was getting in the way of me traveling, learning from different events, and I had to do my schoolwork while running my business at the same time. So I finally pulled the trigger. I told my dad that, well, mind you, I've told them many times. I was like, hey, I don't think school is for me. And they're like, oh, no, no, keep going. I'll pay for your college and you just pay me back. Finally, I was like, yeah, school is not for me. I've decided to pursue this financial industry and build my own business. And I can see that my dad was just speechless. He didn't know what else to say to get me to continue their vision of going to good school, getting good grades, and work at a good company, and then have a good life. That was their version of stability and success for me. So when I told that to them, luckily my dad was just like, okay, you always do whatever you want to do anyways. So do whatever you want to do. Mind you, I'm the second child, so they didn't have as high expectations for me. My sister went to school. She graduated as a graphic designer and she minored in photography. And she didn't use any of it. So she was stuck at my parents' business at the nail salon. She made really good income, but that was it. That was her world. And that was her circle as well. So seeing that I didn't want to be stuck in there, I chose my own path. And I know that it has caused a lot of hardship for me, for the family. And I think everything just worked out for the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's how far I
Yeah.
am now on my journey, and I continue to grow, and I'm really happy where I'm at. It's there's a lot more to grow, and I'm really excited. I had a conversation with my mom this morning, and she's like, "How's your income?" I was like, "Income? Are you stable?" And I said, "Business is never stable, mom." "Okay, but are you guys okay?" I was like, "Yeah, we're fine. We're here. We're alive. We're healthy." And that kind of calms her down a little bit. She's like, okay, as long as you're here and you're healthy, I'll do whatever I can to support you.
Wow. And what does your dad say now about your business?
He is not as concerned about where I'm going with life. He sees me more than my mom nowadays because I work from home. And our conversations is not really about my work. It's more about grandma,
Mhm.
life, principles that he could teach me about business. So we don't really talk about my income. He just goes like, so are you doing good? Like all that. And then all I need to say, yeah, we're okay. And he's like, oh, all right.
Yeah. Do you feel like from, I guess, translating that Asian parents' acceptance, especially from the dad's or father's perspective, right? If they don't ask too much, that means they've kind of accepted it. And
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually really loving now that the conversation I get to have with them is not anything about ego or trying to prove to them that I'm valuable and my self
Mhm.
worth is there because of the income that I bring in. I feel like they know I'm a big part of the family because I'm there for my grandma. I'm there to take her to appointment, take care of her eating, and I help them with their paperwork, my parents' paperwork. And if there's anything that they don't understand, paperwork wise, they always come to me, like administrative wise. So I feel like in the younger age, I always try to prove my self worth to them in terms of money coming in, income. But now I feel that they already know what kind of value I bring into the family.
I remember in one of the episodes you talked about that because you changed and even you working on yourself, that caused your parents and your dad also to kind of interact with you in a different way. I think you said that he kind of gave you a kiss, or your mom said something that was kind of out of the ordinary of what they normally would say. So do you feel like part of it is also because you've changed so much and they can probably feel all that you've changed and your energy, or more grounded word would be like your kindness or the love that you show to them is also from a different intention, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think parents observe so much of their
Mm.
children and they don't want to get in the way of us growing. So they don't really say too much. They just kind of hold it quietly and just make sure they're there for us if we fall. I do recognize that when my mood is not too positive, I have very different interaction with them. And because I have that different interaction, I guess they kind of react to my energy 100%. Like sometimes I just not having a good day, I have brain fog, and my dad would say something very normal. And I just get so irritated. I'm like, dad. Just talk back to him when he asks a question. Instead of answering the question, I kind of go around making him feel like, come on, you should figure this out yourself. And I recognize that's very toxic. So whenever I'm with him, I can just kind of tell myself if I'm not having a good day, I just don't say anything. And I just like, oh, okay,
Mm.
And I'm gone. I'll be in my room for the
Mm.
rest of the night. But if I'm in a really good mood, and it's sad that I have to be in a good mood to be around them, but I'm so aware of impacts that we have with our family, especially if I'm not feeling good, I have a big impact on my family. So when I'm feeling good, I stay there, I spend time with my grandma, and then I ask her how things are going. And I feel like they are happier too. They become more chatty. And because I was in a good mood, I didn't feel it was annoying. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally relate. It's like when I'm in a really good state and I feel more chattier than I normally am, then people would actually come up to me and they would start talking to me, and then we would just have a very flowing kind of conversation. Even if I wasn't the one initiating it. It's very interesting how people can actually sense your energy. Like when I'm a little bit more shut off, then people don't come up to me as much to talk to me, which is very interesting. And I feel like, especially our parents, and I guess especially the people that you live with, they can kind of tell what mood you're in. Maybe even they don't know it consciously that they can tell kind of what mood you're in. But I feel like I might go a little woo woo here, but that energy transfer of just us recognizing each other's energy, that still goes on even though it's unseen. So that may be what's happening. But I can totally relate where when I'm feeling more chattier, then I would have a very good conversation. Just last week, not to go off on a too much of a tangent, but I was in a very good mood. And this client and I were chatting at Pure Bar. And then we ended up talking so much that we got to know each other a lot more. And then at the end of the day, she went home and she texted me. She said, "Hey, I made a pie for you. Come over and get it." It was like, had I not been in that mood, had I not been able to connect with them, she wouldn't even think about giving me a pie that day. So it was just like kind of the beautiful things coming out of being in a good mood and being in a chatty mood. I could totally relate to what you're talking about.
Yeah, that is so amazing. What you just shared is the universe just returning our
Yeah.
good energy, right? We are in a good mood.
Yeah.
So the universe, all
Yeah.
right, Suzanne, let's get more.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and we notice when we're in a bad mood, and when we're
Yeah.
unconscious about it, the day gets worse and worse and worse.
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
it's the
Yeah.
awareness of it is so important
Mm.
in every aspect
Yeah.
of our lives.
That's true. I think we can probably do a whole episode on like choosing your mood consciously and that awareness.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear about your story with telling your parents when you quit your 9 to 5 and the degree that you spent so much money and time to get. Now you kind of let it go. How was that for you?
Mhm. So my background was I grew up in a very traditional Chinese family. They always wanted me to become the doctor. And I think before I went into university, I'm like, I want to become a doctor, ophthalmologist. Back then, I didn't even know what that term meant until like I went to this career fair. So they were super happy. Oh my God, they're like, she's going to become a surgeon and everything. And then I realized I cannot stand blood. Like I just cannot even look at it. Even now when I go to do blood work, I can't even look at it. So I'm like, I don't think doctors for me at all, especially cutting open eyes. So I told my mom like, hey, I want to do this engineering thing. And back then she didn't even know what engineering was. She's like, why would you switch from holding a scalpel to holding a screwdriver? And I'm like, Mom, I'm not going to become a mechanic. I'm going to become an engineer behind the computer and designing stuff. And then she got a little bit more okay with it. I'm like, I'm still going to be in science. I'm still going to be in physics and all. Same kind of with you, with your dad. I'm always the type of whatever I want to do, like nobody can stop me. So she's like, just go for it. So I had this whole engineering degree, graduated. Even during my studies in engineering, I could tell that probably halfway through I didn't like it that much, and I was struggling with my grades. Like grades were always such an important thing, and for the first time I actually failed a class in my whole life in engineering, and that was like one of the moments that I felt shameful of and everything. So I was struggling that much in engineering. It was just kind of, I really noticed that my body just didn't like it. But I continued with it still. I was too scared to switch my major back in the day, so I just finished with it. I got a job in engineering. I worked in the field for like 7 years, and then I decided I didn't like the corporate world anymore, so I decided to start my own business. So that's kind of like a quick story of what happened. But just thinking back, it's like my body, even in school, was already telling me, hey, this is not the right path for you, but I didn't listen to it. And so when I was like 7 years into my career, I realized I don't want to spend my whole life. I was maybe early 30s back then. I didn't want to spend at least 30 years of my life in corporate that I would have left in my career. I'm like, I don't want to spend 30 more years in cubicle walls. So I started kind of Googling what other business ideas are out there. This whole real estate idea came into all my social media feed. So I decided, hey, I'm good with math, I'm good with numbers, and real estate investing is just basically making sure that you can make a profit in the back end. So it's just a lot of plus and minuses of numbers. I'm like, hey, I think I can do that. So I took a course in real estate, and then I decided to eventually quit my 9 to 5 and jump into the real estate. And so when I told my mom and my dad also, they both thought that, hey, why are you doing this risky thing? They're from the background of very similar to you, Sally, like thinking that university was the next best thing for me because they didn't go to university, getting a stable income, sitting behind the computer, or being in an office was a step up for them because they're from a blue collar world. So they thought that I was just giving all that away to risk my life to be in business. And they're like, don't you find it as a loss that you put on all that time for your degree, build a career, build a reputation, and now you're going to just kind of give it all away? And I'm like, no, because for me back then, how I saw it was I've built up kind of, I tried this thing. I've tried this engineering degree thing. I've tried this engineering career thing. I've learned a lot from my engineering career that I brought into the business, like kind of how do we work as a team, or what kind of boss I did not enjoy so I don't become like them to my future team. A lot of the social and professional interactions, I had picked up a lot of those, and I still use those even till today. So I don't regret anything, or for me, it wasn't throwing it all away. It was just a chapter that I've learned from it, and then now is for me to go on to another chapter. So it's kind of very similar to what I told my parents back then. It wasn't a loss for me. It was just a lesson learned. And so that's kind of how I told my mom. My mom is the more conservative, the more worrier type, that she's like not risk averse at all. My dad had a business growing up when I was younger in Hong Kong. So he's been in the entrepreneurial world, but from the, what was it, the Asia market crash back in the 90s. So his business failed, and then he kind of went into getting a job and all that. So he has a little bit more of a risk averse and entrepreneurial mind compared to my mom. So he was more open to accepting it than my mom did. But yeah, it was just because I think from the point of view of people listening to this, you have to convince yourself first, kind of like what you did, Sally, too. You already made up your mind that school wasn't for you. For me, it was the engineering career wasn't for me. And you have to convince yourself first before you can convince any other people, especially our parents, because them having not gone to university, of having gone through what we've experienced, they think that what we had already back then was already the next best thing for us. So it's just convince yourself first, then that's when you're able to convince other people. And it goes back kind of to the state that we talked about. When you're in a good state, then you're able to influence other people on your decisions. So yeah, work on yourself first and notice like why you really want that for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when I discovered entrepreneurship, I just felt like this is a whole new door and whole new world that opened up to me. Otherwise, when I was calculating about graduate high school at 18, go to 4 years degree, so I'll be what, 22 years old. And if I want to get higher education, maybe another 2 years, so I'll be 24, and then I'll work for a company, and then I will maybe retire at 65. I just like, what? That sounded absurd to me. Like, who sold that? Who sold that product?
Yeah.
My parents obviously bought it because it's the American dream. That's why
Yeah.
they left their business back home. They were doing really well back then, but they were thinking about leaving those behind because they knew that we won't have a future in Vietnam. It would be really tough. I appreciate my parents' vision of not wanting us to go through the same hardship that they did. But now we're going through a different sort of hardship because we didn't get to experience that. But do you feel like with your family, you're able to fall back and kind of reach out to them if you fail?
Yes. Hey, if you're enjoying this episode or this show, it would mean a lot to me if you can subscribe to our channel or follow our show on Spotify or iTunes or wherever you're listening to us. Leave us a review also so that we can share the show with more people. Now, back to your show. So, even now, I switched to the coaching business. Again, I let go of something that I built, burned down that whole real estate business, and we can go into that story at another episode. And then now the business is still kind of ramping up. They always ask me the same question as your parents do. It's like, how's the business doing? Especially my mom, the more worrier person. Are you making any income? Are you making money in the business? And I learned this from a mentor. Like, instead of worry myself with my unstable business revenue, but just telling them like, hey, the business is growing. I'm working on it, so that I'm not bringing the worry to them, because basically in the end, I feel like they just want us to do well and have that stable lifestyle. So I'm sure it's debatable where it's a good thing to bring our own worries to our parents or not. But at this moment, I kind of feel like when I'm being still in a worryful state, I don't want to have to console my parents that, hey, it's okay to have them trust me, or it's just like, okay, it's just protecting my emotions right now to not have them worry about me as well. And then I'll have to kind of help them emotionally too.
I think that's a really good point because a lot of time, especially us Asian, we do not want to share our struggles with the people around us just because we don't want them to worry. And I find out that it's yes, we don't want them to worry. And at the same time, we are kind of robbing them out of the experience of
Yeah.
wanting to support us in the middle. And imagine if we struggle this whole time, let's say 20 years, I don't know, 10 years, right? And this whole time we're just holding it in ourselves, and they on the sidelines just watching Suzanne running this marathon that seems like there's no end, there's no finish line that they could see, but obviously we see it. And during this time they really want to step in and give you a bottle of water, offer you a banana so you can continue on, but we just be like, we're okay, we're fine. And then we hit that finish line, and we look back, our parents are like, yay, you
That's
did
true.
well, but we weren't sure what part we play in your story.
That's true.
Because I was
Yeah.
exactly like that when I was running full force in my financial business. My parents didn't see me, even though we lived in the same house. I was out before they were awake, and I came back when everybody was asleep. Luckily, I was in my 20s, but if I would do it now, I think I would die because my health was so bad. And my parents didn't get to see me. My daughter didn't get to see me. And I didn't want my parents to worry. Now, there are times that I come home and I think about, wow, how did my mom survive knowing that her daughter is out until
Mhm.
2 a.m.? What sort of emotions went through her mind and her head? Did she eventually become okay that she's might or might not see me home and might or might not even know if I made it home safely?
It's true.
I need to have a conversation with her, but that's something I think about from time to time because have a daughter, and I couldn't stand not knowing where the heck is my kid.
Yeah, that's true. Do you share your struggles with your parents? And if you do, how much of it, or how would you share it?
I didn't share anything with them. when I was
Mm,
going through the midst of it, because it was just so difficult for me to juggle so many things on my own already and trying to explain it in a way that they understand, because there's so many terms that is not available in Chinese in terms of mental health. And honestly, this is before, let's just say 2021. I had no idea what mental health was either. I was going through it and I was like, oh, this is just me. And when I finally did more digging after 2021, I became more open to my parents and I told them, hey, I did go through a phase where I had depression and there were thoughts of suicide. Their reaction was like, they froze. They're just like,
they don't know what to do.
they didn't know what to say, what to do. And all they could ask was, how are you feeling now? And then I just
Mm,
told them the truth. I was like, I'm doing better. And I
mhm.
think it helps if you guys just don't nag me too much.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I feel like you brought up a really good point, and that's gonna probably tie into our next episode too, because that language of mental health, it's a language that I had to learn of even knowing what I'm going through. Like I feel like even your words of depression or even having that awareness that you're having those suicidal thoughts, that was something that when you're in the midst of it, it's kind of hard for you to become aware or even to tell yourself that you're having these thoughts. And I feel like maybe because especially in my family or maybe in your family too, the fact that this language of mental health or emotional health wasn't something that we were aware of growing up or that we are able to use, that when you share your own depression and suicidal thoughts with your parents, that they kind of froze and they almost don't know how to handle it because they almost like don't have the tools to be able to support you. And now that I'm thinking, it's like maybe that's why us growing up as Asians, it was almost like we don't want to share those struggles with our parents because it's like, can they really support us that way? And I'm not coming from any negative or condescending way, but it's just an observation that without the tools, it's kind of scary for somebody to be to know how to support you other than saying, oh, are you okay? It's okay, it'll pass. But it really takes a lot of self-awareness of what you went through in your own journey to be able to support another person. So I felt like maybe the fact that our parents lack the tools, maybe it caused us to kind of like hold ourselves back and not share as much of those struggles with them. It's just an observation. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's because as a human being, if we don't have a word to describe it, we don't
Mm,
understand it. If we don't have a word for magenta, like the color magenta, right? Because there's so many shades of pink. And as women, we are so much more diverse in this vocabulary. With men, you tell them, hey, can you get me that magenta purse? They're like, what? What is it? We know exactly what it is, right? So same thing with mental health, emotional health as well. When we share it with somebody like, hey, I'm feeling anxious. And in Chinese, like, what do you say? I have no idea what the word is.
yeah, exactly. Or even like talking about suicidal thoughts, I learned is something that's very prevalent in the mental health world. But it's like when you go tell your parents or somebody Asian that you're having suicidal thoughts, they're like, I don't know what to do with you. You're scary. Just make sure you don't die. Maybe call a number. But then, like, without the tools equipped in you, it's almost impossible to support somebody in a way that they need the support to receive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this subject is really, really profound because a lot of times we just have to accept whatever happened to our parents that has transferred to
Mhm.
us and forgive them for not being able
Yeah.
to go through that hurdle. Now, the it's on us. Everything is on our plate. We can decide to work on it now and decipher it, or we will pass it on to the next generation. And
Mhm.
honestly, I feel like I have passed some of it on to Kana, but it's still not too late because I'm learning all these tools and I'm
Yeah.
teaching her instead of letting her figure it out on her own when she grows up. Last week, I had this conversation with her because she starts to think about how do I make more money. And if it was our parents, they would be like, don't worry about money right now. Just focus on studying, right? That's all you need to do. No, not with me. I was like, great question. I like that you already think about making money because what's the end goal of graduating high school or college? So you can make money and be of value to the society. But you don't have to wait until then. You can be of value right now when you're 11 years old. And she's like, okay, how? And then she's like, can you teach me more about finance and how to run a business? I was like, yeah, sure. Then she's like, can you like make a course or something? I'm like, I'll buy you a course and you can,
Wow.
and then I can support you. I told her, hey, one thing that mommy needs right now is somebody to help me make videos. So why don't I sign you up for this video recording course and then you help me to edit? And then she's like, do I get paid for that? I said, yes. And then she
Wow.
started asking really good questions. She's like, do I get paid doing chores? I say, no, because that is your duty to contribute into the family. I don't get paid
Mm,
raising you. I don't get paid cooking for you, right? So because that's my contribution in this family. So doing chores doesn't make you money. However, you are being of value to the family. But when you spend your money and time to learn a skill set like video making, you should get paid doing that because most of people don't. And then her little engine started turning and turning. And I told her one thing. I said, hey, Kana, by the time you're 18, Mama wants to teach you everything that I know so you could be me and
wow.
more. And she's like,
Yeah.
okay.
Wow. Do you feel like that the fact that you're equipped yourself as a mom now with these tools of self-awareness, emotional awareness, and financial intelligence, it's like having that closer relationship with her, do you feel like your daughter is more open to sharing her own struggles with you because you're able to have that language and support for her?
She definitely is able to share more with me compared to with Michael or my parents because of language barrier with my parents. And Michael is just not emotionally there like me. And there are things that she shares with me that I feel very, very grateful that she's able to use the vocabulary to pinpoint down to her feelings and how she's currently feeling because she's 11 and she's going through a lot of change with her body, moods, and hormones. And there are things that I would never have asked my mom when I was her age. She would bring it up to me. I was like, sometimes the approach is what I'm stuck on because should I use humor with this or should I tell her the truth? I mean, I always try to tell her the truth, but how do I deliver it? Do I want to deliver it in a serious way or, oh, it's normal. Everybody goes through it.
Yeah, you have that that choice of how you want to share that message with her or kind of how much you want to share with her too, right? I'm just thinking about there may have been, especially her growing up in a teenager in a woman's body, I'm sure there was some stuff that she's telling you that maybe you wouldn't have been comfortable telling your mom back in the days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
We weren't there. Like me and my mom, we're not there. And a lot of times I still don't talk to her about my intimate life. I just thought it's not your business to get in there. Yeah, but
Yeah.
with Kana, it's really interesting. Yesterday, her and I, we were putting a cabinet together, and then I got hurt. And right away, she's like, hold on, hold on. So she went to grab the band aid and she cut it out in a certain shape, and then she just put it on for me. And I was in really short temper because I just felt kind of tired and I'm like done for the day. But I took a deep breath. I'm like, okay, let's just give her the opportunity to prove her worth, her values in this family by taking care of mama. Right.
Mm,
And then at the end,
wow.
my hand was hurting, and she's like, come here, come here. So she pulled me to the sink and started giving me like rundown water to make it feel better. The way she took care of me was so sweet. And I was like, where did she learn that? Did she learn from me?
Sure she did. Aw,
Yeah.
that's so sweet. And I'm not saying anything negative about our parents because I had to also learn to accept that they only brought us up to the point of they knew how or however they saw their parents doing it. They just modeled after them and they raised us the same way. And so it took me a while to accept that fact they only knew as much as they knew how. And sometimes, like my old self, I would be like, well, why wouldn't they be able to support me in times of struggles? Or why couldn't they support me the way that my friends' white parents do it or give them a
Mm.
hug and all that and kind of blaming them? But it's not the same conditions that they grew up in. And so now that you're able to have Sally, you, these new tools that you have that you learned in this lifetime and that you're able to bring that and share that with Kana, or even like when you were in a bad mood and you were feeling tired, but you were able to kind of contain yourself in a way to give her the space to explore and taking care of you too. It's like without having your own awareness, you wouldn't be able to give Kana that space. And I feel like that's beautiful, the fact that you're able to provide that kind of growing up environment for her. And so I'm not saying anything that's negative for my parents, because they didn't have these tools. These things were not even prominent or popular back in the days. And it's almost like a blessing in disguise. Like if it weren't for them to kind of give us that environment where we weren't really supported, I felt like I wouldn't have gone out to search for all the help and search for all these tools that I now know that I can bring on to my next generation. So it's all like a cycle of, they talk about the, what is it, bad times build strong people,
Mhm.
good times build weak people. And same thing with the people around us. Like, I don't want to use the word weak people, but like weaker people without the necessary tools do bring up stronger people. So it's about not blaming them, but recognizing and observing that they only knew the best they could. And then the blessing out of that was that we're able to learn about all these new tools and give to our next generation. So I felt like that was beautiful, how you were able to hold that safe space for Kana, even though you were all tired and maybe a little frustrated.
Yeah, I think, and going back to our parents, is that from time to time, I become that little girl again to allow them to take care of me. Because now we're grown up and our parents, sometimes they kind of look back in their life and think about, wow, remember when Sally was just 2 years old and she completely relied on us for her survival? Now she's this, she's speaking, she's doing podcasts, she's all of those things. And I'm sure they are proud in certain way, but they always see me as their little girl who always needs protection. And when I just kind of let my guard down and be a little girl around them again, they have that sparkle in their eyes that they know they're important. They are important in our lives. They're not just,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I've done my job and then I'm gone. Bye. No, it holds values in our lives.
That's so true. Thank you for sharing that. That really brought me to understand kind of how I can even better my own relationship with my mom as I'm thinking about moving back home and everything. So it was something that I was feeling a little nervous about, because it's about repairing that old relationship. But thank you for sharing that. Now that I look at it, it's like, no, now I can even hold that safe space for her, to give her that
Mhm.
space to take care of me too. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure she's excited to have you back
Yeah.
for a new journey.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing. I'm so excited for you.
Yeah. Thank you. So I feel like we've touched on a lot of different topics today that we can even elaborate a lot more on next time. Is there anything that you want to add to close off this topic about us leading our own lives versus our parents' expectations for us?
Yeah, I feel like in our generation now, paving our own path that our parents has never imagined how it could be like, it's almost like they see us walking, then they see it's the end of the cliff. They're so scared if we're gonna take the next step and where we're gonna go. Are we gonna dive down the cliff, or is there going to be more land and steps that will appear in front of us for us to continue stepping ahead, right? And I feel like for us, we have that fear inside where I'm not sure what the next step is, but I know I will keep going. For our parents, they are a little bit more worried. So I would just suggest to share your journey with them. You don't have to share all the gruesome things, but share your struggle and at the same time share your joy, your celebrations. If something happened to you where you felt unfair, I would say share it with your parents as well. They would love to be a part of your journey and support you in any way they could.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I feel like it's important now that we had this conversation. I'm sure you too, as a mom, you would want to know what your daughter is struggling with, and it's like thinking about including them, and even during your struggles. Yeah, like you said, it's like not maybe not sharing everything, but recognizing their need also to want to know what's going on with you, even the good and the bad. So I feel like that's a beautiful reminder.
Yeah, last tip I would like to give is nowadays when people ask me how I'm doing, I don't say good or great anymore because a lot of time I don't feel great. I feel just okay, right? But I always tell them now that I'm healthy and I'm happy. And
Wow.
gets people to think because they're so used to good or I'm fine. Oh, I'm happy and healthy. Same thing with my parents.
Wow.
When they ask me how I'm doing, and I say, I'm healthy and happy. That's it. That's all they want to know.
Wow. That's a good tip. I might use a version of that.
Yeah, and it's the truth though. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Back when I kept telling people that I was doing great. I was not. I was struggling.
Yeah.
But now I felt like, okay, I'm not doing great, but I'm healthy and happy. And
Yeah.
that is the truth. I
Yeah.
felt more aligned.
Yeah. And we need that authenticity. And sometimes when you hear somebody that says something different, that's not like I'm good or I'm great. It's like, where did that person come from? It makes them a little bit more curious. It adds a little spice of authenticity to somebody else's day too. It's like, oh, I can say that, or gives them the permissions to not always say the things that people expect you to. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Sally. As always, if you guys have any questions or if you want us to elaborate on any of the topics, drop us down a comment below. We'll be more than happy to explore more of that topic with you. If you have any questions that you want us to talk about specifically, we'll be more than happy to share our own experience with you as well. And as always, give us a like and subscribe to our channel. And we will see you at our next episode.
Bye.
Bye.